Hello everyone, back again with movie and tune recap. Today, I'm going to explain an American supernatural horror film from 2015, titled Visions. Spoilers ahead, so watch out and take care. The movie begins with Eveleigh waking up in a hospital after being in a serious car accident, and her husband David Maddox is by her side comforting her. Eveleigh is devastated, as the crash killed a child in the other vehicle, and she blames herself, but David reassures her that it wasn't her fault, and managed to calm her down. A year later, Eveleigh and David move to California, where they are preparing to reopen a vineyard they bought in Paso Robles, and it is also revealed that Eveleigh is 3 months pregnant. That night, they host a party to celebrate the successful opening of their winery. Among the guests are Helena Knoll, a top wine distributor in the area, and Eveleigh's friend, Eileen. During a conversation, Eveleigh is surprised when Helena mentions her pregnancy, even though she didn't mention it to her. She also asks if Eveleigh knows anything about the house's previous owner, which adds to Eveleigh's unease, and Helena excuses herself. Eveleigh finds Helena in their bedroom, muttering to herself in a strange trance, and after snapping out of it, Helena abruptly leaves the house. Eveleigh tells David about Helena's odd behavior and how she mysteriously knew about the pregnancy. That night, Eveleigh wakes up to discover she is bleeding from her stomach, and the iron bed frame is moving on its own. However, it turns out to be a terrifying nightmare. The next day, Eveleigh visits her GYN, Dr. Matheson, for a pregnancy scan, and afterward, she confides in the doctor about her disturbing nightmare. Dr. Matheson tells her it might just be stress from the pregnancy, and recommends a yoga class to help her relax. Eveleigh starts attending the class, where she befriends another pregnant woman named Sadie. Back at home, Eveleigh begins experiencing disturbing hallucinations, seeing things that aren't really there. She starts spying on her neighbors and also notices a sacrificial offering nearby. That night, while painting, she feels uneasy and spots a man in hoodie standing outside their home. Frightened, she locks the door, and when she looks again, the man has moved closer. She is startled by David, and after telling him there is someone outside, David checks, but there is no one there, and he reassures her that everything is fine. The next day, Eveleigh confides in Sadie at a cafeteria, sharing her recent strange experiences and opening up about her lingering guilt over the car accident. Back at home, Eveleigh sees coins standing upright on their own, and hears a loud banging noise. She also notices a gun on the floor, and suddenly, all the wine bottles in the canteen explode. When David arrives, Eveleigh explains what just happened, but everything looks normal. There is no gun, and the wines are untouched. The knocking turns out to be their neighbor, Troy, who is simply there to greet them, and David is disappointed with Eveleigh's behavior, as it seems like she is overreacting. David and Eveleigh visit Dr. Matheson to discuss her behavior, but Eveleigh insists she is not crazy and that she knows what she saw. Dr. Matheson suggests that if the visions continue, Eveleigh may return to medication, which frustrates her. That night, David and Eveleigh invite Sadie and her husband Ben over for dinner, and while everyone is chatting and enjoying themselves, Eveleigh seems distracted, which upset David. Alone with Sadie, Eveleigh admits that something feels off about the house, but she doesn't know how to convince David to believe her. The next morning, Sadie accompanies Eveleigh to meet with the realtor, Glenn Barry. Glenn tells Eveleigh that the vineyard house has no dark history, but suggests she look into the previous owners, the Porters, for answers about possible paranormal activity. That night, while Eveleigh and David are getting intimate, Eveleigh suddenly screams after seeing the man in a hoodie, which interrupts the moment, leaving David frustrated by her behavior. Trying to calm herself in the kitchen, Eveleigh is attacked by a mannequin, causing her to break a glass, but when she looks, the mannequin is gone and David rushed to her aid. Eveleigh's visions intensify, leading David and Dr. Matheson to believe that her PTSD has returned and is causing the hallucinations. They urge her to resume taking the antidepressants she had stopped due to her pregnancy. Reluctantly, Eveleigh agrees, and the visions cease. As her pregnancy progresses, everything seems to calm down. Several months later, Eveleigh meets up with Sadie at the cafeteria and recounts her medication intake to her. Sadie convinces Eveleigh to stop taking her medication, suggesting the visions might not be a result of her mental state. During their conversation, Eveleigh spots David outside with another woman, but before she can approach them, they drive off. Back at home, Eveleigh becomes suspicious and decides to check David's desk, where she finds unsettling items, including creepy drawings. Eveleigh also opens a mail belonging to Jane Porter, the previous owner, and contacts Jane, who has been researching about ghosts and poltergeists. Jane directs her back to Helena Knoll to ask about the trance she experienced at their party. After stopping her medication, Eveleigh's haunting visions return, and she begins to suspect there is a conspiracy against her, possibly involving David. She visits Helena and explains what she has been experiencing, and sensitive to the supernatural, Helena agrees to help. She takes Eveleigh to the ruins of a home that once stood on the vineyard's property, and there, both women experience a vision of a figure emerging from a pond, which frighten them. Helena explains that psychic violence can leave echoes in time, and some paranormal activity becomes imprinted on the land. While Helena is on the phone with her daughter, Eveleigh's haunting intensifies. She sees a bloody handprint on the wall and objects moving on their own. She finds Helena shaking violently on the floor, and before dying, Helena whispers, "It's not what you think, it's you." After Helena's body is taken away by paramedics, Eveleigh notices one of the villagers chanting words while holding a strange object. When she confronts the villager, she learns the object is for protection, and the villager reveals that the demon on the land grew stronger after Eveleigh and David moved in, suggesting that Eveleigh is somehow connected to the dark presence. Now fully aware that something is terribly wrong with the house, Eveleigh decides it's time to leave and tries to convince David to move away with her. However, David refuses, citing the large investment he had made in the winery, and in frustration, Eveleigh storms off alone. She visits vintner Victor Napoli, whose family owned the vineyard a century ago, and he reveals that his great-grandmother burned down the original house on the property because of paranormal activity. He then shows Eveleigh a series of old sketches made during a séance where a medium tried to contact the spirits in the home. Eveleigh is shocked to see that the sketches depict her and David, even though they were drawn over 100 years ago. Panicked, Eveleigh calls David, urging him to leave the house immediately, but David tells her he can't leave because Eveleigh has the car, so she promised to come back and pick him up. That night, Eveleigh drives back to the house to get David, but instead finds herself walking into an intervention. David, Dr. Matheson, her friend Eileen, and family therapist Victoria Lambert, who turns out to be the woman David was seen with earlier, are all waiting for her. They believe Eveleigh's visions and behavior are signs of a mental breakdown, not paranormal events, but Eveleigh tries to explain that she hasn't been haunted by ghosts, but by premonitions. She realizes that the sketches and the strange events are not just echoes of the past, but warnings about a future tragedy that is about to happen that very night. The Porter and Napoli families weren't being haunted by spirits, they were experiencing premonitions of this same disaster, a tragedy that Eveleigh now understands she must prevent. Suddenly, a loud knocking interrupts the tense situation, and despite Eveleigh pleads not to open the door, David answers it, but it turns out to be Sadie and Ben. They claim they were driving to the hospital when Sadie water broke, and she don't think she can make it in time. While the group rush to help Sadie, Eveleigh grows more frantic, trying to convince David that they need to leave the house immediately. Things take a dark turn when Sadie, holding a gun, corners them in the kitchen and forces them into the living room, where Ben has already held the others captive. As the tension escalates, Victoria attempts to flee but Ben shoots her, and in the midst of the commotion, Dr. Matheson was also shot but Eileen managed to escape. Ben overpowers David and goes after her. Meanwhile, Sadie, who is wielding a knife, confronts Eveleigh, and as Sadie moves to stab her, David intervenes, but in the struggle, Sadie is accidentally stabbed in the stomach. However, Sadie pulls the knife out and stabs David, revealing she was never pregnant. Sadie then relentlessly chases after Eveleigh, intent on harming her, but Eveleigh ends up pushing Sadie through a glass door, before running away. Eveleigh witnessed Ben shooting Eileen before going after her. Eveleigh runs out of the house and encounters Troy, but before she can explain what's happening, Ben shoots Troy, sending him tumbling into the nearby pond. As Eveleigh tries to escape, Sadie attacks her from behind, knocking her unconscious. It is revealed that every vision Eveleigh had was showing her a glimpse of events currently taking place. When Eveleigh regains consciousness, she finds herself tied to the iron bed frame, held captive by Ben and Sadie. It is revealed that Sadie was the woman whose child died in the fatal car accident a year ago, and she blames Eveleigh for the loss. In a horrifying turn, Sadie plans to cut out Eveleigh's baby in revenge. In a last desperate effort, Eveleigh wrestles free of her restraints and uses the iron bed frame to slash Sadie's throat. Ben moves to attack her, but the injured David arrives and shoots Ben dead, finally ending the nightmare. In the aftermath, the vineyard house is left empty, and Glenn Barry shows the property to a new couple as the movie concludes, leaving an eerie sense of unresolved menace. Okay guys, that's all the recap about Visions from 2015. Thanks for watching, see you again in the next video.